Okay, I'm speaking with William Perry Pendley, Deputy Director of the BLM. And Mr. Pendley, first of all, I understand that right now you're basically the acting director still. Is that accurate?
No, never say that. Not acting director, never have been acting director. I've been Deputy Director of Policy and Programs, and the phrase is, that's been in place for about 3 decades, exercising the authority of the director. However, as you probably know, a federal judge up in Montana recently ruled that we can't say that no more. And although this is what has been done about 180 times since 2000, since the Clinton era, department-wide, and about 11 times at the Bureau of Land Management since 2000, that is to say, delegating authority to a person who's legally in his position to sign the documents on behalf of the agency. So that's why we say exercising the authority of the director. So what the judge says is you can't do it that way, and so what we're doing, we think the decision is outrageous, illegal, incorrect, and overturns decades of administrative policy that's been used by Democrats and Republicans alike. Nevertheless, we're going to comply with the judge's order. And what that means is I'm still Deputy Director, Policy and Programs, doing what a Deputy Director does. But if we need something signed by the Director of the Bureau of Land Management, then I'm going to have to send something over to Washington, D.C. and have Secretary Bernhardt sign it.
But you do make a lot of the day-to-day decisions, am I right?
Right, I do whatever a Deputy Director for Policy and Programs does, and that is, we've got 9,100 employees. I have a colleague with me, a Deputy Director for Operations. He's a 27-year career Bureau of Land Management employee, Mike Ned, a former Army officer, and so he runs the operations side of the house. I run the Policy and Program side of the house. And I make my recommendations to an Assistant Secretary, Casey Hammond, who's there, and Secretary Bernhardt, and our Deputy Director, Kate McGregor.
Now, according to a newspaper interview I read in prepping for this interview, you told a newspaper in Powell that the judge's ruling doesn't really have much impact. Is that accurate? Was that an accurate report?
I think that's a little out of context. Simply because it obviously does have an impact. Judges don't write orders to have no impact. They want their orders to have meaning, and it does have meaning. It means that I can no longer sign documents as the exercising the authority of the director. I don't have the authority. I cannot exercise the authority of the director. As has been done by others before me, as I say, for about 30 years. But what I can do is continue to act as Deputy Director of Policy and Programs. I'm under the judge specifically noted that I'm legally Deputy Director of Policy and Programs. But so that's you have to have some context there, and the context is, does it change my activities as Deputy Director of Policy and Programs? No. Have I been ousted? No. Am I still on the job? Yes. But can I sign stuff saying I'm doing this as if I were exercising the authority of the director? No.
Okay.
That sounds all legalistic and stuff, and I'm sorry, but that's it. That's it. I hope that helps.
No, I think you clarified that. Now, on another topic, just philosophically, according again to the prep I did for this interview, you're not a big fan of federal ownership of public lands. Is that accurate or not?
You know what? That's like saying I'm against the sun coming up in the east. I just think that's asinine. And, it's like whack-a-mole. I've been beating down that particular canard ever since I got here. I was born and raised in Cheyenne. I've traveled. I've been in every county in the country. I've been throughout the West. I've hiked and hunted and fished and climbed and biked on the public lands and picnicked and whatever else you can do, shot and on the public lands, and I think they're wonderful. My complaint over the decades on behalf of people from Wyoming and throughout the West has been, but sometimes the government does it wrong. Sometimes the government doesn't manage the land the way Congress intended or the law provides. And so I fought back on behalf of people over the decades, but to call me an opponent of public lands is just that's an outright lie, and it keeps getting repeated. But no, that's not true at all. And I will say, and I need to say, because the left always brings this up, and they say, "Oh, Pendley's going to sell off everything." Well, the Trump administration, President Trump, Secretary Bernhardt, Perry Pendley, is totally against the wholesale disposal or transfer of our public lands, period. There's no quibble there whatsoever. And in fact, it's interesting, it's fascinating to me, Doug, that one of the first things I did was sign off on additional land acquisition. We had Bureau of Land Management employees in Oregon and Montana come to me and say, Perry, we have an opportunity to pick up another 20,000 acres of public land from private hands that will increase access to federal land. And I said, well, let's jump on that. And we did. And so we brought in about 20,000 acres of land up on the Blackfoot River in Montana and John Day River out in Oregon. And we have more on our plate. Simply anything where we can increase the public access. I'm here, as you know, in Casper, and we went out and saw some wonderful opportunities to increase public access to recreational lands here, and I'm all for that. I think that's a wonderful thing.
What would a Joe Biden victory in the presidential election mean in terms of BLM policy, if we know?
Well, I can't. I got to stay clear of the election.
Okay.
But just let me carve out an issue that is so important. I'm a Marine. My older son is a Marine. He's serving in the Pacific right now. And, I'll tell you, Doug, if ever there were a time when we sent our sons and daughters to war to protect energy supplies, that will never happen again. Never happen again. And I can't emphasize how important that is. I'm old enough to remember the oil embargo and the gas lines, and you think the pandemic was crazy. Try to get a tank of gas with cars backed up around the block and down the street trying to pull up to a pump during the Arab oil embargo. We'll never be there. We are now energy independent. A few decades ago, there were people, doomsayers. They were saying, oh, that'll never happen. Oh, that will never happen. We've reached peak oil. They'll never be, we're running out. Jimmy Carter in 1977 said by 1990 there'll be no more natural gas. Well, what a fiction that is. And President Trump did it. And President Trump did it because, in part, he opened up our federal lands in the West, here in Wyoming and in New Mexico and elsewhere in the West, and with fracking technology. That fracking technology, I read headlines and it says, oh, that's controversial. That's a controversial technology. It's not controversial. It's old. It's as old as I am. We've been doing it since 1946, fracking. And thank goodness for that. 90% of our natural gas comes as a result of fracking. And I know there are some people in this country, some politicians, who say they're going to get rid of fracking. Oh, my goodness, heaven forbid, because that would be the end of us. As far as we've got Democratic politicians down in New Mexico say, my goodness, if we stop fracking today, the schools will close tomorrow. That's just how important oil and gas development is to the west, and New Mexico and Wyoming, and it's so critically important to the American people because that we have economical energy supplies that we don't pay through the nose to try to keep the lights on, so old people in our big cities don't have to make a decision between fuel and food. And so President Trump is committed to energy independence, and thank goodness he's got that done. And now we have to grow the economy back. And I'll tell you, I'm heartened. We've got a lot of APDs up here that we've already approved, application for permits to drill. We've seen increased interest in our next oil and gas lease sale. And so I'm optimistic that the oil patch is going to come back. And the economy's going to grow, and we're going to get ourselves out of this thing. Because you remember, before the pandemic hit, we had the lowest unemployment rate in history. Never before in history had unemployment been so low. Lowest unemployment for African Americans, lowest unemployment for Latino Americans, lowest unemployment rate for disabled Americans, lowest unemployment rate for Americans with less than a high school education. Phenomenal. And then we had the unseen enemy come in here, but the president's getting us back.
So I think we could safely say, though, that you feel that getting rid of fracking or banning fracking would be disastrous. Is that accurate?
Oh, it'd be insane. It would be absolutely insane. It's inconceivable that we would do that. And another thing that would be the disaster for us is, as some politicians I've heard say, no more oil and gas leasing on federal lands. Do they have any idea what they're talking about? Our outer continental shelf supplies a tremendous amount of energy to this country. Where would we be without the outer continental shelf oil and gas leasing program? It's just be a total disaster. And you want to talk about recreation? You want to talk about conservation? Do you know where the land and water conservation money comes from?
No, I don't.
The oil and gas program in the Outer Continental Shelf. That's the source. People who want to kill that offshore oil and gas leasing program, that'll be the end of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. You can kiss that goodbye.
Now, you mentioned you're seeing increased interest in oil and gas leases. How about coal mining? Are we seeing any interest there, or is that just kind of flat?
It's flat right now, and maybe less than flat. But it's a tough time, I know Wyoming still has an abundance of great, high quality, low sulfur coal that can be used in an environmentally safe way, and I know Asia is hankering for our Powder River Basin coal, but there are some hurdles there, and with time will tell. I'm asked often by reporters to say, well, with oil and gas on the way out, shouldn't we do X? And, we don't predict stuff at the Bureau of Land Management. We don't know what the future holds. We try to let the marketplace and American creativity and ingenuity guide us. So when Americans say, hey, we can develop solar, we develop a solar project, the Gemini project, $1 billion project down by Nevada. When people say, well, we can construct wind power in the Medicine Bow area that we can service the Pacific Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, and their demand for renewable energy supplies. Well, we make those lands available. When people say, hey, we can make a geothermal energy, then we make that available. The same thing with oil and gas. So we're not in a predictive situation. I remember Paul Harvey years ago when he spoke at the University of Wyoming said he talked about a pessimist who said, when whale oil is gone, the world will be plunged into darkness. So we're optimists here at the Bureau of Land Management and the Trump administration.
Now, there has been, as you know, some ongoing discussion about the wild horse population in Wyoming. I know a lot of people feel that there are too many of them. I think there was a plan to reduce the number of horses. I heard there was a lawsuit over it, and I haven't heard any further thing on that. What's the status on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. We have too many wild horse and burros. We have 95,000 wild horse and burros. The experts that I rely on at the Bureau of Land Management tell me that's 3.5 times what we can carry. It's not compassionate or humane for the horses and the burros. It's bad for the land. Our experts tell me that we have some lands, some public land. Bear in mind, this is public land. We have some public land in this country that is so badly degraded because of wild horse and burros, it will never recover. I'm a lawyer, not a technology guy, but I believe in technology. I believe in people. I believe in creativity and that we can solve any problem. And they're telling me not enough fertilizer or water or time or creativity that will allow us to recover those lands. It's bad for indigenous species. You know, we got our antelope here, we got our elk and deer, we got all sorts of, we got the sage grouse, and they're competing with that. What they do. We got endangered and threatened species that we're trying to protect. And frankly, as you point out by the mention of a lawsuit, it's not neighborly. It's not neighborly what the Bureau of Land Management is doing by having excess populations of wild horse and burros. Now, Congress writes the check and tells us what we can do. And what we can do is we can adopt the horses out. We can gather them and put them in corrals and try to adopt them. We can use fertility treatments. We're trying to come up with new technology that will make that more efficacious. But that's what we're dealing with. I was at a conference up in Cody on Tuesday where I spoke to groups from around the country who care about this issue, and we're trying to work it out. But it's a real challenge for us, and it keeps me awake at night, I'll tell you that.
But it sounds like you are working to reduce the populations. That is ongoing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to do it. We're gonna have, in 20 years, we'll have millions of them. You know, you say, 20 years, that's a long way away. Man, I remember 2000 like it was yesterday. That's just 20 years away. We'll have millions of them. I think it's 2.8 million we'll have if the population continues to grow. We can't do that. Yeah, we're doing our best.
Mr. Pendley, that's all I have. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
No, Doug, I appreciate being on your show, and I just wish everybody well. I'm excited to be working for the Trump administration. I think the president is doing great things with Great American Outdoors Act, with his commitment to fighting fires. We haven't even mentioned the firefighting and the tough work we've done. Bureau of Land Management is proud to have a professional firefighting organization, and we've done great work this year, both fighting fire and keeping our men and women firefighters and the public safe from the virus. So great work being done, and let me know anytime, Doug, you want to talk. I'd be glad to come on your show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Thanks.